January 22nd, 1945, East Prussia. The snow has turned gray from soot and ash. A freezing wind whips across the fields outside Königsberg, carrying a sound few have ever heard before. Deep, rolling, and rhythmic, like the growl of an approaching storm. But this is no storm. It is the artillery of the Red Army. Inside a small farmhouse near Tapiau, 40-year-old Gertrude Müller stands by a cracked window, clutching her wool shawl tight against her chest. Her husband, Otto, once a clerk for the local rail office, stands silently beside her, staring eastward. "It's thunder," he mutters. Just thunder. But they both know it isn't. For weeks, rumors had swept through the towns, villages burned to the ground, columns of refugees clogging the roads, and the Soviets advancing relentlessly, unstoppable. Out beyond the tree line, flashes light up the horizon in eerie succession. The faint concussive rumble follows seconds later, rolling across the frozen earth. Horses in the barn shift nervously, stamping and snorting. Somewhere a child begins to cry. A messenger on a motorbike, his Wehrmacht uniform coated in frost, roars past on the road, shouting something unintelligible. In his wake, the air fills with the acrid smell of exhaust and fear. In Königsberg, the church bells toll, not for prayer, but as an alarm. At the train station, hundreds of civilians jostle for space on the platforms. Old women carry suitcases filled with bread and blankets. Young mothers clutch infants to their chests. The tracks stretch westward, a fragile path to safety. Soldiers from the Volkssturm, Germany's last desperate militia of old men and boys, are herded into makeshift ranks. They wear mismatched uniforms, some with medals from the Great War pinned beside Hitler's emblem. Their eyes are hollow. Across the frozen Pregel River, columns of smoke rise. Soviet artillery, 152mm howitzers, are pounding German positions at the river crossings. The sky pulses red in the east. Gertrude can see it now clearly. A faint orange glow on the horizon, flickering like the edge of a burning curtain. Otto's voice breaks. They're here. By nightfall, the endless thunder draws closer, shaking the walls, rattling dishes from shelves. Windows shatter as concussions ripple through the countryside. Gertrude falls to her knees, covering her ears. The sound feels alive, heavy, monstrous, deliberate. For a decade, they had been told the Reich was invincible, that the war was distant, abstract. But now, standing in the cold ruin of their home, they realize the truth. The war has come home. As the night deepens, German refugees begin their exodus westward. The roads are clogged with carts, bicycles, and endless footsteps. Snow muffles their sobs and the rumble of artillery behind them. Overhead, the dark shape of a Soviet Il-2 Sturmovik fighter bomber crosses the clouds, its engines snarling. Searchlights stab the sky, catching snowflakes like falling embers. And still, the sound continues, the ceaseless pounding of Soviet guns echoing across the plains of East Prussia. In the distance, a Soviet forward observer, Lieutenant Ivan Karpov, peers through his binoculars from a ruined bell tower. Range 5,000 meters. "Fire for effect," he orders. The next barrage lights up the night. For the people of Königsberg, there is no longer any illusion. The Reich's eastern frontier is collapsing. By dawn, the sky is streaked with smoke and the horizon burns like sunrise. The thunder of the guns has become a constant drumbeat, the soundtrack of an empire dying. February 3rd, 1945. The road to Elbing, West Prussia. The snow has turned to slush under the weight of thousands of feet, hooves and wheels. What was once a rural highway is now a river of refugees. Women push carts piled with bedding and bread. Old men hobble beside them, clutching canes, their faces gray with exhaustion. The children, those who haven't frozen to death during the nights, walk silently, their eyes wide and empty. Gertrude and Otto Müller are among them. Their eldest son, Karl, had been conscripted months earlier into the Wehrmacht and sent to the front near the Vistula. They haven't heard from him since. Now, with what little they could carry, a family Bible, a photograph, a few loaves of hard bread, they are heading west, away from the sound of the guns. Behind them, the eastern sky flashes with artillery. The dull rhythmic thunder never ceases. Every few miles, a new rumor spreads through the column. The Soviets are already in Allenstein. The roads to Danzig are cut off. The Navy's evacuating civilians from Pillau, if you can reach the coast. The cold is merciless. Frost clings to the refugees' scarves and eyelashes. Horses collapse in the snow, their breath steaming, their legs trembling. Those who fall behind are left behind. There are no soldiers to protect them now, only scattered Volkssturm units retreating with whatever weapons they still have. Many of them are just boys, too young to shave, shouldering rusted rifles and staring at the endless line of refugees with hollow resignation. A group of Luftwaffe trucks roars past, the officers inside shouting orders. Dust and snow whip into the faces of the civilians. "Clear the road! Make way for the military," one screams. But the crowd cannot move faster. There is nowhere to go. By afternoon, the column reaches a crossroads where a burned-out Panther tank lies half buried in snow, its turret blown open like a rusted wound. Scattered around it are the frozen bodies of its crew. Someone has draped a tattered German flag over them. No one stops to bury the dead. A distant drone hums overhead. Heads tilt upward as a dark formation passes through the clouds. Soviet Il-2 Sturmovix again. The cry goes up, "My planes! Get down!" Panic ripples through the crowd. People dive into ditches, clutching their children. Seconds later, the shriek of rockets cuts through the air. Explosions tear into the road, sending mud, snow, and bodies flying. Horses scream. Wagons splinter. Gertrude grabs Otto's hand and drags him into a roadside trench as another blast rocks the ground. When the air clears, the road is chaos. Smoke, flames, broken carts, shattered limbs. A girl of maybe 12 stands frozen beside the body of her mother, staring blankly. Gertrude tries to call to her, but the girl doesn't move. Otto pulls her away. "We can't stay," he mutters. That night they huddle in a barn with dozens of others. The air smells of damp straw, fear, and unwashed clothes. Someone mutters a prayer in the corner. Another whispers about what the Soviets are doing in the captured towns, how women are taken, houses looted, and no mercy shown. Outside, the thunder of artillery grows louder again. It's not distant anymore. Each concussion shakes the earth beneath them. Somewhere in the darkness, a child begins to scream, and an old woman hums a lullaby to drown out the sound. For Gertrude, the realization settles like lead in her chest. There is no more safety, no more distance. The war they once believed was fought on foreign soil is now around them. Above them, inside every heartbeat. At dawn, they join the road again. The endless gray procession stretching toward a horizon that no longer promises salvation. Snow begins to fall once more, gently at first, like ash from the burning east. April 20th, 1945, Berlin, Hitler's birthday. The once proud capital of the Reich lies in ruins. Streets that once echoed with marching boots and fanfare are now graveyards of rubble. Columns of black smoke rise from the government quarter. And beneath it all, like the heartbeat of an approaching monster, comes the thunder of Soviet artillery. At first it sounds faint, like distant drums beyond the horizon. But as the hours pass, the booms grow sharper, closer, more defined. The people of Berlin stop pretending it's thunder. The old joke, "The Russians are at the gate," is no longer a joke. They are here. Inside a small apartment on Schulstrasse, Anna Weiss, a 29-year-old nurse, tends to the wounded from last night's air raid. The stairwell outside has collapsed, the windows blown out. Dust hangs in the air like fog. A young soldier, barely 17, lies on the kitchen table, a tourniquet tied tight around his thigh. His uniform bears the armband of the Hitler Youth. Anna presses a cloth to his wound and listens to the rhythm outside. The boom, boom, boom that rattles the glass and the bones alike. "They're firing from across the Oder," says an old neighbor crouched by the window. 50 kilometers away, but it feels like they're already here. In the distance, the roar of Katyusha rocket batteries echoes. A high-pitched wail followed by a deep, gut-punching crash. Soviet Guards units are unleashing their barrage on the city's outer defenses. The air itself seems to shake with it. Anna looks out the window toward the east. Columns of smoke mark where Lichtenberg once stood. Civilians run across the intersections, clutching bags, children, and sometimes rifles. Every street corner is barricaded with overturned trams, sandbags, and piles of bricks. The Volkssturm mans them. Old men in worn coats, boys with barely any training, some armed only with Panzerfausts and blind faith. One of them, Heinz Müller, age 62, adjusts his helmet and grins grimly at his comrades. "They'll have to fight for every street," he says. Berlin doesn't surrender. His words sound hollow even to him. Then it comes, a new sound, sharper and closer. The whistling scream of incoming shells. They dive for cover. The explosion rips through the next block, blowing apart a bakery and sending a wave of dust through the street. Anna covers her ears. The wounded soldier on the table begins to sob quietly. By evening, the artillery is relentless. The Red Army's first Belarusian front under Marshal Zhukov has broken through the Silo Heights and is closing in on the city. To the south, Marshal Konev's first Ukrainian front pushes from the other side. Berlin is being encircled, trapped in a tightening fist of steel and fire. Hitler refuses to leave the Führer bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. In the concrete corridors below, officers whisper updates in low voices. They've reached the suburbs. Shells are hitting Tempelhof. Communications with the north are gone. Above ground, the civilians hear everything. The earth shakes with every impact. Children cover their ears and cry as the walls crack. Each blast is followed by a rain of plaster dust, a slow snowfall of despair. At midnight, the shelling pauses, then begins again with doubled intensity. It's as if the Soviets are pounding the very heartbeat of the city. The sky flashes red, and from somewhere across the Spree, the faint echo of tank engines can be heard. Berliners lie awake in basements and cellars, staring into the dark. Every explosion counts down the last moments of a nation. Every flash on the horizon signals another street lost, another block gone. And through it all, the civilians know, without a word spoken, that this sound, this terrible rhythmic thunder, is not just the approach of an army. It is the sound of their world ending. April 25, 1945. Berlin is burning. Whole districts are swallowed by flame as the Red Army claws its way street by street into the heart of the city. The artillery no longer sounds distant. It shakes the ground beneath every step. Windows implode, walls collapse, and every explosion feels like it tears a hole through the world itself. In the ruins of Alexanderplatz, Soviet T-34 tanks grind over tram lines and rubble, their tracks clattering like chains in the inferno. Red infantry, faces blackened with soot, eyes hollow from sleeplessness, advance behind them, firing into every doorway and cellar. German snipers hidden in the ruins answer back, their shots echoing like whip cracks through the smoke. The city has become a labyrinth of death. Anna Weiss runs from building to building with her satchel of bandages, trying to reach the hospital at Friedrichstrasse. The streets are chaos. Volkssturm fighters drag wounded comrades into doorways. Flames lick at the sides of buildings, devouring the last scraps of posters that once proclaimed Sieg oder Tod, victory or death. Now only ash remains. A tank shell strikes a nearby tenement. The blast throws Anna to the ground, her ears ringing, her face peppered with dust. When she lifts her head, she can barely see through the haze. Screams echo all around her. She crawls to the side of the road where a boy, no more than 16, lies clutching his stomach. His uniform hangs off him, too large, too new. Blood seeps through his fingers. "Hold on," she whispers, pressing cloth against the wound. The boy's lips tremble. They said the Führer will save us," he murmurs. Anna says nothing. The ground shakes again. Somewhere nearby, another building collapses in on itself with a roar like thunder. At the Brandenburg Gate, Soviet troops raise their flag amidst shattered statues and smoldering marble. German Panzerfaust teams lie in wait behind barricades of stone and twisted rebar. One soldier, Oberleutnant Franz Keller, clutches his last rocket launcher, watching as a T-34 rolls into view. He takes a breath, whispers a prayer, and fires. The explosion lights the square in a brief blaze of defiance. The tank bursts into flame, but seconds later another takes its place. Across the city, the Reichstag is visible now, its dome fractured, its facade pocked with shell holes. It has become the ultimate symbol, both fortress and tomb. Every German unit left is ordered to defend it, to the last man. The Red Army knows it, and they are coming for it. Inside the bunker beneath the Chancellery, Hitler listens to the artillery through the concrete walls. Each distant explosion thuds like a slow drumbeat above him. The maps on the table are meaningless now. The front lines no longer exist. When told that Berlin is surrounded, he nods once, expressionless, and mutters, "Then the war is lost." Above ground for Berlin civilians, survival is a minute-to-minute decision. Food is gone, water scarce, fires spread unchecked as hydrants run dry. The night sky glows orange and red, reflected in the puddles of the ruined streets. In one of those streets, Anna helps carry a wounded man toward a subway tunnel that now serves as a shelter. Inside, hundreds of civilians sit shoulder to shoulder, some praying, others staring silently into the dark. The air is thick with smoke, the walls dripping with condensation. When the shelling grows louder, people cover their ears and begin to hum, desperate to drown it out. Then, amid the chaos, a strange silence falls. The artillery stops suddenly, completely. For a moment, Berlin holds its breath. People look at one another, wondering if it's over. Then faintly at first comes a new sound, the grinding of treads, the clatter of metal, and shouted commands in Russian. The Soviets are here. Above them, in the burning city, tanks and soldiers push through the streets once filled with parades. The Reich is dying, not with ceremony or fanfare, but with the sound of collapsing stone and the final roar of the guns. April 30th, 1945. The shelling has not stopped for 6 days. The heart of Berlin is unrecognizable, a blackened maze of fire, dust, and craters. The Reichstag stands like a ghost in the inferno, its once proud columns scarred and crumbling. The air reeks of cordite oil and death. The Soviet artillery no longer fires in the distance. It fires from the streets themselves. On the eastern approach, the men of the 150th Rifle Division move through the ruins, step by step. Soviet soldiers clutch their PPSH-41 submachine guns, shouting to each other over the roar of tank engines. Each intersection is a killing ground. The Germans fight from basements and shattered stairwells. Sniper fire cracks from the windows of the ministry buildings. Panzerfausts flash from doorways, but the tide cannot be stopped. In the shadow of the Brandenburg Gate, Lieutenant Ivan Karpov, who weeks earlier had called down artillery in East Prussia, now leads his platoon across the ruined square. He moves from cover to cover, his boots crunching over glass and debris. Every few meters another explosion throws them back, but they keep advancing. "Forward," he shouts. "Berlin is there." Inside the Chancellery Garden, the last defenders, SS troops, Hitler Youth, and Volkssturm, prepare for the final stand. Their ammunition is almost gone. Their faces are black with grime. They no longer shout slogans. They only fire until their rifles click empty. Underground in the Führer bunker, Adolf Hitler sits in silence, listening to the artillery pounding above. The map room shakes with every impact. Around him, the remnants of the Nazi high command whisper in half-mad resignation. Outside, Soviet shells are landing within 300 meters of the bunker. At 3:30 p.m., word reaches the Soviet forward units. The Reichstag is surrounded. Red Army soldiers hoist the hammer and sickle flag through the shattered windows and climb toward the roof amid machine gun fire. When the flag finally flutters in the smoky air, it is both a signal and a symbol. The conquest of the capital, the death knell of the Third Reich. Moments later, underground, Hitler takes his own life. His aides burn his body in the courtyard as shells rain down. No one knows and no one cares. Above, the battle still rages. The artillery continues to hammer the city long after the war has, in truth, already ended. In the subway tunnels, Anna Weiss huddles with hundreds of civilians, the sound of the bombardment echoing through the earth. Dust drifts down from the ceiling with every impact. A child asks, "When will the thunder stop?" No one answers. Outside, Soviet infantry move through the Tiergarten, stepping over wrecked vehicles and corpses. The city is a graveyard. Atop a burned-out Tiger tank, a Russian soldier plays a harmonica. The melody is slow, mournful, a sound almost human amid the ruin. As night falls, the guns begin to fade. The last German strongpoints are collapsing, their defenders surrendering or dying where they stand. Fires consume entire blocks. The once proud capital of Hitler's Reich is now a landscape of shadows and ash. Gertrude and Otto Miller, the couple who fled Königsberg months earlier, now find themselves among the ruins of the capital, having followed the refugee columns westward only to be overtaken by the front. They sit in the doorway of a ruined schoolhouse, too weak to move further. Around them, the city burns. Otto looks up at the red sky and murmurs, "It sounds the same as it did in East Prussia." Gertrude nods, only closer. The thunder of Soviet artillery had followed them all the way from the fields of the east to the heart of Berlin. It had never stopped, not until now. At midnight, the guns fall silent for the first time in months. The silence is deafening. The war at last has reached its final breath. May the 2nd, 1945. Dawn. The city that once called itself the heart of a 1,000-year Reich now lies buried beneath its own ruins. Berlin has fallen. The guns are silent, the air still, and the smell of smoke lingers like a ghost. Soviet soldiers move cautiously through the streets, weapons at the ready, eyes scanning for the living among the dead. For the first time in months, there is no thunder, no distant roar of artillery, no echo of war rolling over the rooftops. The silence feels unnatural, almost unbearable. Anna Weiss steps out of the subway tunnel where she has sheltered since the final days of fighting. The daylight stings her eyes. Around her, the survivors emerge like ghosts, pale, hollow, dazed. They move without speaking, as if unsure whether they are still alive. The cityscape before them is unrecognizable, entire blocks flattened, trees splintered, statues toppled. Smoke rises from what used to be the Reichstag. The red flag still fluttering from its broken dome. A Soviet officer, his uniform caked with grime, walks through the rubble, issuing orders in curt, tired Russian. His men begin directing civilians toward makeshift aid stations. One soldier offers Anna a piece of bread. She hesitates, then takes it with trembling hands. The war between their nations had been one of annihilation. But now, in this fragile quiet, there is only exhaustion. In the ruins of the schoolhouse near Potsdamer Platz, Gertrude and Otto Müller sit in the doorway, watching columns of Soviet troops pass by. Otto's arm is bandaged. Gertrude's shawl is tattered and gray. Around them, civilians hang white sheets from windows, signs of surrender and despair. Somewhere a radio crackles. The Führer is dead. The fighting in Berlin has ceased. The words drift through the ruins like a whisper. It takes time for them to settle in, to become real. For so long, the war had been the rhythm of their lives. The shelling, the air raids, the marching boots. Now, with the sound gone, they feel unmoored, suspended in a hollow silence. Gertrude looks toward the horizon, the eastern sky pale and cold. "Do you hear it?" she asks quietly. Otto shakes his head. There's nothing left to hear. But in that nothing, in the emptiness of post-war Berlin, the echoes remain. Every shattered window, every cratered wall, every abandoned street holds the memory of that thunder. The rolling percussion that began in the fields of East Prussia and ended here, at the heart of a dying empire. Anna walks through the Tiergarten, where spring has begun to touch the wreckage. Amid the twisted metal and the blackened trees, small patches of green push through the ash. Birds return, their tentative songs weaving through the ruins, the first sounds of peace. In the following days, Soviet engineers clear the streets and German civilians begin burying the dead in shallow graves beside the rubble. The smell of gunpowder fades, replaced by damp earth and smoke. Slowly, Berlin begins to breathe again. But for those who survived, the sound of the artillery never truly leaves. It lingers in their dreams, in the tremor of passing trains, in the wind that rattles broken glass. It is the sound that told them the truth, that the war had come home, that the invincible Reich was mortal after all. On May 8, 1945, the guns across Europe fall silent. Victory in Europe Day. The war that began with triumphal marches and fiery speeches ends in silence and ash. Gertrude Müller stands on the ruins of a bridge, watching the sunrise over the Spree. The light catches on the water, turning it gold for a brief, fragile moment. She closes her eyes, hearing only the wind. For the first time in years, there is no thunder, no fear, only quiet, and in that quiet, the memory of every sound that came before, the distant rumble of artillery, the collapsing walls. The cries of the fleeing and the dying become something else entirely. History. The war is over. The thunder has gone, but the echoes will never fade.